Hello, hello. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to CollinInMono. This will be episode 6. Today, I am joined once again by Collin Macintosh. How are you doing, Mac? It's been a minute.
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man, in this newly found apocalyptic world that we live in.
Yeah. Have you gained the quarantine 15 yet?
Right before this started, ironically enough, my roommate bought a scale.
Oh, no. So, you can track it.
I was like, that bad move, man, because I have definitely been having my quarantine meals here and there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've been snacking a lot, and I think between like the amount that I'm drinking and just snacking on stuff, I feel like Carrie's been doing a lot of the cooking, so like the meals are a little more balanced. But I feel like I'm still getting a little tummy. I think it's happening, and then the weight room's locked up, so I can't. I mean, I guess I can't exercise. I'm just being lazy. I could exercise at home, but
I mean,
let's be real.
Yeah.
Come on, it's a pandemic. I can't be bothered.
Yeah, we can still go outside and walk too. It's not like you can't.
What? No, you stay at home.
You stay at home. Yeah, no, I mean, dude, it's definitely one of those times though where it's like, it almost feels like a forever Christmas break. That's what it reminds me of, because Christmas break was always that time during school when I would sit on my ass and do nothing but eat and play video games.
It does. And I remember when I was in college, summer break and Christmas break is when I got a lot of reading done. This is when like the Game of Thrones books were pretty big. So I would read for 7 hours a day. I would sit on my comfy couch, and I get sleepy when I read. So I'd read for like an hour and a half, and then I'd just take a nap, and then I'd wake up and just read again for another 2 hours. I knocked out that whole series in like one summer. And so I pulled my Kindle off the bookshelf and recharged it. And so I want to get back into that, but like now all these great games are coming out. I don't really have the time. I mean, I do have the time. I'm just not making the time.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely should get back to, I have an entire, actually, someone from work still has my Kindle. Because I left it at work on my last day.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You can probably go pick it up. My camera's still there. But I still have a bunch of photos that I took a few weeks ago that I need to edit. So since I haven't touched those, I'm like, all right, well, I don't need my camera because I'm not going to go out and take any more pictures right now. I need to edit the ones I got. Otherwise, they're going to sit, and then I'll like rediscover them in 10 years. Like a lot of the stuff I've been like refinding and editing. I'm like, oh man, I took this picture. This picture's great. But back then I didn't know anything about editing. So it just by default, it looks like an picture. And then when I edit it, I'm like, oh man, this actually turned out really fucking good.
This picture was edited by, picture was taken by a dude named C. Macintosh.
Yeah.
Who the hell's that?
Who is this? Who's this guy?
Exactly. So let's get down to it, man. So today we want to focus on talking about Dragon Ball Z. So Dragon Ball Z is a series that I myself grew up on, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there have grown up with. It's pretty much the seminal anime. Anyone that thinks or talks about anime, a lot of people's minds go straight to Dragon Ball Z, turning Super Saiyan, the extended episodes full of grunting, and a lot of really intense over-the-top fights and a lot of monologues saying, like, I can beat you. No, I can beat you.
This isn't even my final form.
This isn't even my final form. Exactly. All the memes, over 9,000. That show just continues to give. But what makes this episode special is I wanted to talk to Mac about Dragon Ball Z because he had never seen it or experienced it in any way, shape, or form. So Mac told me one day that he was playing Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and was really liking it. So I figured we could do a show about him experiencing Dragon Ball Z for the first time. So I would honestly, Mac, I want to start with your first impression. I know you played the game, but it's still the same story. So I would like your overall take first.
Well, would you rather me go back into my first impression of Dragon Ball Z and why I never watched it? And then
let's start there. I would love to hear that.
I got into it.
Yeah.
Let's
start there.
Dragon Ball Z got really popular amongst my friends in probably middle school round. I would say like maybe 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah,
so this would have been.
I think you're like 8 years older than me, right?
Yeah, this would have been.
I was born in 96, so you were born in 88.
Yeah, so this would have been like 99. Maybe 2000.
It's about when it blew up.
Yeah, and this was like on Toonami and all that, and And the anime I was watching at the time was like, there was this Final Fantasy anime, like Search for the Crystals. There was, I think Cowboy Bebop was like just starting.
It was around that
Really
time.
sure. Anyway, yeah. So there was like some anime that I was like kind of getting into, like Trigun. I was pretty into at this point. I was like dabbling, and a lot of my friends were all super into Dragon Ball Z. Like in class, they were sketching like Goku and Vegeta. I had some friends who were like really good at it. I think they just memorized like all the lines, and then I would see it here and there, and I was like exposed to it in that way, like through people who watched it, and I would hear them talk about it, and I would listen to the conversation, didn't really have anything to contribute. And then once I remember I was this back when I was living in North Carolina, and I was visiting my uncle who lived in Oregon, and it was like a day where nothing was going on. I think he was like at work, and my cousins were busy, and I turn on Toonami and watch an episode of Dragon Ball Z, and it was in the Frieza saga. And so this is my first exposure. I'd never seen Dragon Ball. I'd never seen Dragon Ball Z. I knew Goku was the main character who ate a lot, because every time I watched Trigun with one of my friends, he would be like, because the character Vash the Stampede eats a lot in it, and then he was like, oh, it's just like Goku. And I was like, all right, everything doesn't have to be like tied into Dragon Ball Z. This can be its own thing. And so I was like, all right, well, let's see what this is all about. Maybe I can get into it. This is also like, I remember this is the same time I watched the first episode I ever saw of the original like 88 Mobile Suit Gundam.
Oh, wow.
Well. It was like I think the same day, actually. And I put it on, and it was during the Frieza saga, and it was a scene where Vegeta is charging up. And then the whole episode would be Vegeta charging up, and then Frieza talking smack, and then it would cut to like Piccolo and Gohan and Krillin watching the thing, being like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then I'll tell you what's gonna happen. Fucking nothing. The whole episode, it was like 30 minutes, or sorry, like 26 minutes or whatever. And then it was Vegeta charging, Frieza talking smack, and then looking at him. And it just kept cutting between those three things. And then it was like, on the next exciting episode of Dragon Ball Z, will Vegeta finish charging up? Tune in next time to find out. And I was like, I'm good. And so I put it down for 20 years and never came back. And that was my initial exposure. So I was always like, but like there's certain things I liked about it. And then I had friends when GT came out who got into that, and I would hear them talk about like the movies, and one of my buddies was like really liked this Broly character. And so I still don't really know anything about Broly. I just know that he's apparently like really, really strong. And now apparently that's non-canon, but they brought him back for Super.
And now he is canon.
And now he is canon. Is he still super, super strong?
Yeah, because he's touted as the quote-unquote legendary Super Saiyan.
But does he go Super Saiyan God? Which I just learned about.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see just how convoluted, like the whole Dragon Ball Z, I guess, what would you call it, like hemisphere or something like that, like how that whole ecosystem gets really messy really quick. But I think your criticism of your first impression of Dragon Ball Z is very much valid.
I think what happened is it all lined up where the one episode I decided to watch to get into it was like the worst episode I could have watched to get into it. Like if I would have been like the very end of the Frieza saga or the end of like the Saiyan invasion saga, I think if I would have saw one of those, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I got to see what this is about. But I think I just happened to tune in at the worst episode. Yeah,
and you're so right, actually, because I've seen all of Dragon Ball Z completely uncut, like all the filler, everything. And what I can tell you is that time after Vegeta fight happens, but before the Frieza fight, that kind of pocket in there tends to be some of the drier parts of Dragon Ball Z, at least in my opinion. There's some cool fights in there, like scattered about. I think the Captain Ginyu and the Ginyu Force fights are pretty neat. But some of that stuff just it's hard, right? This has been stretched out for far too long, and it's taking forever to get somewhere. And then you eventually do get to the Frieza saga, which is like, thank God. Okay, we're here. Shit's going down. This is getting intense. Because Vegeta's like, oh, Goku, you need to avenge the Saiyans. But the great thing, or the hilarious thing, is that's like right in that pocket where you saw it was like very much stereotyped Dragon Ball. Because throughout that part of the series, Goku is on a ship to get make his way to Namek. And he says during the episodes, I'll be there in like 11 minutes, guys. And it's like 4 episodes later. And he's like, I'll be there in 5 minutes.
They just track time.
Yeah, exactly. And then he finally gets there and you're like, Jesus Christ, thank God we can move the plot forward finally.
Yeah, for a long time, my story about like why I never got into Dragon Ball Z was always like this bit. But then I eventually, like, I kept getting exposed to it through other people. And then I eventually saw Dragon Ball PP. Or Dragon Ball's PP or whatever. If you're listening and you haven't seen this, I'll tell you it's some of it hasn't aged as well. It's a little more offensive now than I think it was when it came out. But if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, Dragon Ball PP, just look it up on YouTube. I think it was originally like a Newgrounds thing. But like the Captain Carrot Cake, it's so good. It's got some really great references in it.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, but like I've known enough about it through that and just friends talking about it and being a part of those conversations. And so I eventually was, and then another like exposure I got to it was near the end of basic training. There was this guy, I can't even remember his name now, it's so long ago, but he was a Dragon Ball, a couple of my buddies were Dragon Ball Z, fucking everyone's a Dragon Ball Z fan, but a couple of my buddies were Dragon Ball Z fans. And at the end, they wanted to do a Ginyu Force pose for like a picture on like a graduation day. And I still have that picture. I have it on my computer. I looked at it the other day when I got drunk. I was like going through old photos. I'm gonna find it and put it in the chat so you can see
absolutely.
it. But basically, it's this Ginyu Force pose. And I was like, wait, this is out of Dragon Ball? Like they're just posing in this ridiculous thing. And so when I finally like saw that part, I was like, oh my God, this is the pose. This is the Ginyu Force. And I wonder, like, did they have auditions or something to kind of get people like, you know, to be in Ginyu Force? How did you manage like that?
Like you mean the characters in the show?
Yeah, like in the show, do they have to, like, before you can be part of Ginyu Force, do you have to be able to do like a section of the pose? Because don't they reference that when one of the characters like dies?
You could be right. It's been it's been a while since I've seen those episodes.
Yeah, here you go.
Oh God, you found it.
I found it.
Oh God, I'll have to put it in the show notes. That's great.
That's me on the left.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I was 18. I was a baby.
That's Raccoon in the middle.
I guess. Who am I? I mean, it's only 3 of us. Ginyu Force is what, like 5?
It's Jace, let's see if I can remember this. Jace, Birder, Ginyu, Raccoon, and I always forget the dude with all the eyes. I
don't know. But they had to tell me how to do the pose because I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And then when I saw that bit, I was like, oh my God, I have a picture of this.
Goldo? I don't remember. But yeah, that's really good. I'm gonna have to put that with the show. When I put,
that is Army Strong
exactly,
right
Army
there.
Strong.
That's what that is. That was like 2007, like December 2007.
Wow.
I think that is.
Yeah. So what was interesting to me too, though, is when you finally decided to experience, you know, the story really as a whole. You experienced it through Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which is the latest video game for Bandai Namco. And I think nowadays when people ask me like, hey, I want to get into Dragon Ball Z, I would definitely not tell them to go about it by watching all the uncut episodes like I did. I just don't think that's a very like consumer friendly way of doing it at all.
Yeah, you're a big proponent of Kai, right?
That's what I don't like Kai personally, but that's how I would suggest someone watch it if they were to watch it for the first time, if that makes sense. Because it's not my preferred way of watching it, but for someone else, it's way more palatable. Like they cut out all of the filler. There's no like extended grunting or extended scenes of dialogue or reused like shots.
The fact that extended grunting is a thing.
And it's just none of that. Like they cut out a lot of it, and The reason why I don't personally like it is they changed the music and they changed some of the voice actors from the original. But if someone's watching it for the first time, they're not going to know any better. You know, and if anything, they actually redid the script too to be more accurate to the manga. So when Dragon Ball Z was released on Toonami, the dubbing, the script was actually different from the Japanese version.
I always forget that it was a manga first.
Yeah.
And how long was that gap, though? Like, was it a manga and it had been like 5 years and they started the anime, or were they going pretty concurrently?
So,
because I know like One Piece and like Naruto and stuff, they kind of ran pretty concurrent, but like the anime was always a bit behind.
Yeah. So when the original Dragon Ball manga came out, I think that was pretty far ahead when the Dragon Ball anime came out, and then Toriyama got into Dragon Ball Z, and then the anime followed. We didn't get the American, like, I think we were about 5 or so years late before Dragon Ball Z hit American shores. Like, it was already out in Japan for a long time. Which is why we got video games in the US with GT characters before GT ever even came out here.
So we could get like content and stuff from it, but like this is back in the days where you had to have like a local, because before Amazon or anything, you had to have like a local anime store.
Oh, yeah.
Or like sometimes comic book stores would carry anime.
Yeah.
They would have a little section.
Suncoast, man.
Because I remember those days, like it's fucking Suncoast. But Suncoast before, and then Best Buy, where I grew up, Best Buy always had the better anime section, but we didn't have a Best Buy for a long time, and Suncoast was the only option. But once Best Buy opened, like if I wanted to get an anime DVD, like let's say the third Trigun DVD, Best Buy would have it for $20. Suncoast would have it for $30. For every single anime, Suncoast charged $10 more, and this is like 2002 money.
Yeah.
So I was like, I couldn't afford that. So like once Best Buy came around, I was like, fuck Suncoast. Best Buy's got more anime options, and it was like cheaper. So that's how I got into like. Was it there was a Desert Punk? I think
I've
was
seen
an anime.
Desert Punk. That's a deep cut.
Yeah, I own that whole series along with the box. I've like, because what I would do is sometimes they would sell. You could get the box with the first DVD included. And the issue I would run into sometimes is they wouldn't release the box with the first DVD. I would end up like buying the first, second, third DVD, and then all of a sudden I see in the store they've got the box. So I had to rebuy the fucking first DVD just to get that box, and I would just like give it to one of my friends and keep the box so I could collect the whole series in there.
Damn.
Yeah, I did that with Desert Punk. I definitely did it with Berserk. I had the box set of that. Bebop I got on eBay, and same with Hellsing, and I'm pretty sure those were both like weird Russian burnt DVDs that they like were able to print labels for. The box art was cool, but when you put it in, the menu screen would look like really cheap. And I remember for Hellsing specifically, it didn't say play. First of all, it's not a movie, it was a series, and it didn't say play movie, it said Pali Moviev. And so I still reference, if I see play movie in like a menu screen, I always say in my head Pali Moviev. Just because of the Hellsing. Have you ever seen Hellsing?
No, it's been recommended to me quite a few times. That's the thing, man. Is like anime back then, especially. I mean, still now it's expensive to collect anime. Like,
yeah, but like you got Crunchyroll and stuff, and there's places where you can stream it and it's dubbed. You don't have to turn to pirating or anything. You can still. There's plenty of like legit legal ways to watch it and get it. And you seem like someone you're okay with watching it subtitled.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you prefer subs, or are you like one of those like never dub?
No, absolutely not. If the dub is good enough, then I'm happy to watch the dub. There's a few animes that stand out to me that have good dubs. Like I always have to watch. I mean, Dragon Ball Z. Since we're talking about it, like it has to be the original Toonami dub with Sean Schemmel and Chris Sabat. The Toonami dub with the Bruce Faulkner music.
Like a purist.
That's the way I have to watch Dragon Ball Z. I can't watch it any other way, or else it'll bother me.
You find yourself rewatching it often? Or?
Clips sometimes. I did a full rewatch like a few years back because I bought all the seasons.
Wow. How long is
9
that?
seasons across. Yeah, 9.
Like 26 episode seasons?
I want to say. I think it's like over 200 episodes long.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'd have to do the math again in my head, but I remember it was like 6 discs per season, so 9 seasons, 9 times 6. So that's math is hard. 28, 56. Is that 56? So yeah, 56 times like 4 episodes a disc. So it would be about 200 or so. Yeah, so I did a full rewatch.
And that's not Kai, is that's OG?
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z.
They cut out like 2 seasons worth of stuff in Kai. That's how much they cut out.
I believe it. Marina, Dave had never seen Dragon Ball Z, and she was going to go through. Dave and Marina are friends of ours at Maria's former coworker, and Dave had never seen it, so they were going to go through it and watch it all again. And so I recommended they watch Kai. I was telling them how you told me about it. It's more like not necessarily abridged, but like kind of trims the fat, I think. But I haven't seen either, so I guess that's what we're getting around to is how I consume Dragon Ball Z.
Which honestly, I think if not Kai, what you did is a great alternative, which is what you played Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which so you're gonna have to help fill in the blank in terms of stuff they do and don't cover in that game. I can break it down. I love that game, man. It was so good, and I think I pretty much 100%ed it. And to get to that point, I want to say it was probably around like 50 hours. So it's like it's a big game, but it's like, it's so good. It is so stupid. Like I will do nothing but sing the praises of that game. And I know it had its criticisms, and then I guess we'll get into the specifics, but man, I fucking love that game. Which was, I was so glad to hear that you were having such a good time with it. I think that if you're a pretty like long time Dragon Ball Z fan and you're pretty passionate about it, you've probably played a lot of the games. And so I think a lot of the criticisms lobbed at Kakarot come from a place of like someone who has probably played a lot of the games and seen the series, and because a lot of the stuff they do in that game is stuff that we've seen plenty of times before. There's slightly new spins on it, being that it's an open world game and all that stuff. But it's telling the same story, and if you're someone who's played the Dragon Ball Z games, you've played that story so many times, it's kind of like beaten into you. Like you fight Raditz, and then you fight Nappa, and then you fight Vegeta, and then you fight the Ginyu Force, then you fight Frieza, and then it's it's the same thing. You know exactly what's going to happen. But the reason why this is so interesting to me is that this is the first time not only are you really experiencing Dragon Ball Z, but also Dragon Ball Z games on top of that. And so it's actually pretty cool to talk to someone who is coming at it with fresh eyes and experiencing that for the first time and enjoying it as much as you have, which I thought is really cool. So, yeah,
kind of speaking to that, I think a big benefit. I mean, this really worked out in my favor having not seen it. And I think if you're interested in getting into Dragon Ball Z and you do like video games, I would say Kakarot's like the perfect way to do it. Because someone like me, I don't notice what's missing. And so I think if someone like, if Collin, played it and, he could go do a certain story arc, like the Saiyan invasion or something, and be like, oh, they totally just didn't even fucking include this one thing or this whole arc. Like they just aren't going to put that in there. Whereas I'm going through it, whereas this is the only way I know it. So I'm not noticing. It's like watching Game of Thrones, but not having read the books.
Sure.
You just assume that's how it is. And that's kind of what, like right now I'm watching Altered Carbon. It's the same thing, but apparently people who read the books, I haven't started season 2, but people who read the books are upset about season 2 because it diverged enough from the books. And that's what happened to me with Walking Dead, because I was a huge fan of the comics. And then when the show just shifted so much, I kind of like fell off of it because it became so much of its own thing, but was still similar. It was same, but different enough to like just be insulting. And so I could see someone who's like really into Dragon Ball Z thinking like the game's maybe missing some pieces. But the biggest criticism I've heard of the game is the gameplay, which I really liked. It reminded me a lot of the criticisms for the first Assassin's Creed game. Whereas in the first Assassin's Creed game, for example, people were like, yeah, for every mission, you like go here, you listen to these people, you find out the intel, then you go assassinate the person, you fight a couple guards, then you escape. And then the next mission's the same thing, and it's the same thing until you beat the game. And my response to that, because I really loved the first Assassin's Creed when it came, this like circa 2008.
Yeah.
It was 12 years ago,
I played
if you can believe that. Yeah, and I remember thinking like, yeah, and that was fucking awesome, and I got to do it over and over again. You know, so like sometimes if there's a gameplay loop that I really enjoy, I don't get burnt out by its repetitiveness. I enjoy doing that thing over and over again because I just get better at that thing and more efficient, and I think it's a lot of fun. But I can see for someone who's used to like constant variety and new mechanics being thrown in and all of this, getting frustrated with Kakarot. And I'll get into more specifics a little bit later when we, I guess we'll talk about the story stuff, but I was going to go a little more into like how it actually plays mechanically. But I didn't mind because I think the characters, the abilities you got, even though the way you execute those abilities doesn't really change throughout the game, like the button presses kind of stay the same. You can choose what buttons do what. But the attacks constantly escalate and the characters get stronger and stronger. And the way the game does it, I know it follows the series, but it like is paced like that series is written. It feels like it's written to be a video game. It's almost like, I don't know if you ever played Asura's Wrath.
No, it's one of those ones I missed, but I always wanted to go back and play it.
Dude, it is essentially quick time event in the game, but it feels so fun. Because it's almost like Fist of the North Star, another anime game, what was it? Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise?
Yeah, Yakuza Fist of the North Star is basically what it was.
Yeah, it's also, that's how I consumed Fist of the North Star. I did a little bit of research and I watched the first movie. Carrie and I watched it together, which was absurd. She's like, this is ridiculous. What is this? You know, like what she does with a lot of movies that I'm just like, no, you got to see it. It's crazy. And she's like, what is this? What are we watching right now? Yeah. It's just like so, like, couldn't decide if it's like Sylvester Stallone or Bruce Lee. And then people's heads exploding. But the game was so much of the same thing. And it was repetitive, but I enjoyed that gameplay loop a lot. So for me, it didn't burn me out. But I could see if you like always want new mechanics thrown at you, it can get kind of boring. But anyway, like the way Kakarot lays out the story is I can't recall if at the beginning it gives you a little rundown of like up till now what happened, but I watched some YouTube videos on Dragon Ball and like the story so far before starting Z. I found this one guy who almost seemed reluctant to do the video. In the video, he's talking about it and he's like, yeah, I'm going to be real with you. This is not the best way to do this. I tell anyone like, just go watch Dragon Ball. It's great, but I've had enough requests for this video, so I'll go ahead and give you a rundown of what happens.
Oh my God.
And so I watched that. It was like somewhere between 15, 20 minutes long. But I feel like I got the gist. I knew how these characters were introduced and all that. And I'm like, okay, I feel ready. I'm going into Kakarot with like a blank slate. So I'm just like clearing my mind of anything I know about Dragon Ball Z. I know a little bit up here and there. I know some big arcs. Like I know who Boo is. I know who Frieza is. I know that a spirit bomb is a thing. Sure. I still don't really know the difference between a Kamehameha and a Kamehameha.
They're the same thing.
Yeah, but like he never says Kamehameha. He just goes like Kamehameha. But I'm like, then why do you call it? But then I heard Krillin in the Battle of the Gods be like, oh, he's gonna do his biggest Kamehameha or something. And I'm like, I thought he called it a Kamehameha. Yeah. I don't know what are the rules.
They call
here?
it Kamehameha wave when they refer to it like that proper, but then they call it a Kamehameha otherwise. It's just they're interchangeable. They're the same thing.
And everyone can just learn how to fly. I learned that with like Videl. Apparently, anyone can just learn how to fly, which is a weird like bit of the floor.
So. So, yeah, that's pretty much. Well, it's cool that you found like the Dragon Ball summary, and I personally want to go back and watch Dragon Ball. It's all on Hulu now, actually.
Yeah, Hulu's got a lot of great anime stuff. They got like 3 seasons of Attack on Titan, and I think the second and third seasons are dubbed because I need to go back and watch them because I loved season 1, even though it was like 5 years ago. But I want to go.
Dude, it was like 2013 when season 1 of Attack on Titan dropped. It was like.
I got into it late, at like most things. I mean, I'm 20 years late on Dragon Ball. So
they're taking their sweet time coming out with Attack on Titan. But anyway, yeah, so Dragon Ball, and it's cool to like experience the story in that sort of video game sense, and I think that's an interesting perspective, saying that Dragon Ball is kind of built for video game, because in a sense it is. It's definitely like... It's definitely built out to be like a power fantasy sort of video game. 100%. Yeah. 100%. And so... I don't know if they give you a recap at the beginning of the game or not, but yeah, so when you watch Dragon Ball Z, you're basically introduced to Goku as a character, and you give like a quick flashback of everything that happened, and then you're basically thrown into Goku hanging out with Gohan, and like everyone, they go to like Kame house, Roshi's house
to meet everybody.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then everyone's like, "Oh, Goku, you have a kid now." Yada yada yada.
So are you saying that's how Z starts? Because that's exactly the beginning of the game. The game gives you a fishing tutorial as one of the first missions you do, right. And you're teaching Gohan how to fish because he's still got his tail. So Goku's got like his fake tail, and he's like, "This is how I learned how to fish." And then Gohan's like, "I'm scared of everything and I suck and no one likes me as a character." Meh. And so
the accuracy.
Dude, Gohan sucks for like 3 arcs. Yeah, and then he finally turns into someone who's serviceable.
Yeah, he doesn't become good until the Cell Saga.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And then he's like this weird buff 12-year-old, and I remember Carrie being like, "How old is he?" And I was like, "I think he's like 11 or 12." She's like, "There's no fucking way that is the body of an 11 or 12-year-old." And I was like, because he's just jacked.
Dude, that's a shonen anime trope. Like, I think Dragon Ball Z kind of like was the beginning of that, of the whole like, oh, our main character is a protagonist who is a ripped, buff 14-year-old who's still in high school.
So stupid. That's why I like One Punch Man. It's like such a good satire.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then basically we get the whole we that's when you kind of roll into Raditz, and Raditz shows up like, "Hey, brother," and not like Hulk Hogan, but like, "Hey, brother. Turns out you're part of an alien race." And at the time when you first watched Dragon Ball Z, that was like revelatory. It was like, holy shit, Goku's an alien.
See, I was wondering how, like, in Dragon Ball, they explain his tail and turning into a monkey. But, I mean, there's also, like, shape-shifting pig characters and all that. So maybe it's just, like, it's like dream logic.
Yeah, well, it's based on the old Chinese story, Journey to the West. That's what Dragon Ball is based on.
Yeah, like the Monkey King thing where he's on the floating cloud and all that. Yeah,
all that's based on that.
Same with the Enslaved.
And they 100%.
You ever play that game? You ever play that game Enslaved?
No, but I know what you're talking about. How it's Odyssey to the West.
I want to say it's called Enslaved.
Yeah, it's Odyssey to the West.
Journey to the North, Journey to the Sun. Odyssey to the West. Right.
It's the same idea. There's been several adaptations of that story. So Dragon Ball was basically that, and then Toriyama spins it on his head with Dragon Ball Z, and we're like, actually, you're a giant ape because you're an alien.
I feel like Toriyama just saw Superman and was like, "Oh, we're just gonna say that he's essentially Kal-El," and was launched to Earth and raised.
And so what you'll notice too, and on that point is, if you watch the original Toonami dub, they actually redid, when they did the translation, they made Goku out to be more of like a superhero, and like this guardian and like savior of and yada yada yada. When actually in the original Japanese version, he's made out to more be like, "Hey, I'm just fighting for the hell of it. I don't really care about the stakes or how many people die. I just want to like get stronger and fight." Which is why if you watch, when you get into Super, it was super jarring for a lot of people in the States when Goku was just like, "Yeah, I don't care about the consequences. I just want to fight and be a dumb shit."
See, that's what I'm used to from like Kakarot. I feel like that's the way it's framed. But you got to think when they dubbed it and it came out in America, what were its top competitors? It was the Batman the Animated Series and that Superman cartoon that was on at the same time on WB. Like, that's who Cartoon Network Toonami, like the American release, because most teenagers and kids were going to consume it through television. They had to compete with. So I'm sure when they came into the dub and the translation, they were like, all right, well, we got to make this for American audiences. All right, well, what are American audiences consuming right now?
I never thought of it that way.
Superhero cartoons like Batman, Superman, which were like the top two at the time, and then you maybe had like, actually, honestly, that was it. And you had like Animaniacs, but that was still like a younger crowd. Pokemon was kind of a little bit earlier before this. And there's that show like Roughneck Starship Troopers, which is pretty good, which is on Cartoon Network in the mornings. I'd watch that.
No, I mean, that's a good point, though. Stuff. Like, I never thought of it that way. And like, it's to the point where I don't know if they portray this in Kakarot, but the scene in the Frieza saga where Goku gives like this great bombastic speech in the Toonami dub where he's like, "I am the guardian and savior of all and nightmare to you, Frieza." Like, it's just like this
Oh, Kakarot did none of that. I think Kakarot was more accurate because he was just like, "Oh, a really strong guy. I want to go fight him."
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just a lot of that.
It was the opposite of that in the dub.
Also, he's a terrible father.
That's like an ongoing joke too. That's an ongoing joke, and
zero loyalty.
Piccolo's
to
a
his
way
family.
better father to Gohan than Goku ever was.
That is true. Yes, 100%.
But yeah, so you get the whole in terms of the timeline.
Piccolo's like the story of a dad who's sobering up. It's like
That's so true. Oh God. The dad's like that gets out of rehab and is like, I'm gonna reconnect with my son.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a good dad now, but I still I don't want to. I'm still got to be hard ass.
Right, yeah, because he is the reformation of King Piccolo, the big bad from Dragon Ball. So like everyone thinks he's evil at first.
And I lost it.
No worries. I was just gonna say that. So we get into the Raditz fight, of course, because Raditz steals Gohan because he wants Goku to come with him. And then, of course, Goku needs to team up with Piccolo because he's so strong. And Piccolo, being the big bad from Dragon Ball, right? Goku and Piccolo team up, and then that's where we learn Goku's wearing like weighted clothes and stuff like that. So he takes it all off, and it's like boom when it hits the ground. And you get those awesome. I don't know if they animate it in Kakarot, but there's the awesome scenes where they're double teaming Raditz. And they're like running at the camera and they're like switching sides and like doing all this crazy like animation stuff and dodging and trying to hit them and stuff. It's just really cool animation.
For some of the Raditz stuff, they definitely do it. You can tell that you're getting near the end of a story arc because in the game, the animation goes fucking nuts. Like you can tell you're like, oh, this is a 1-for-1. They basically just rendered this to look like how the anime looked. And so I think there might have been a little bit for Raditz. My big memory out of Raditz is Gohan like super headbutting him in the chest. And then Piccolo, sorry, spoilers for a 30-year-old anime, shooting
Special Beam Cannon.
What's his head? Special Beam Cannon! Like through Raditz and into Goku. And then me being like, now I know this isn't the end because Vegeta hasn't even shown up, so Goku's gonna come back. Right. Which happens so many times.
So that's what you learn fairly quickly in that show is that there's not really any stakes in anything that happens.
No stake. It's like Marvel, which for a long time Marvel had one rule. And one of the guys I'm in that Ginyu Force picture with, the fellow on the right, his name was Mitchell. And he told me, this is before Winter Soldier happened. He was like, all right, there's only one truth in Marvel. Like every character who's died always comes back, except for Bucky Barnes. He was like, or not Bucky Barnes. Maybe is it Bucky Barnes? Is that Winter Soldier's name? Yeah. He was like, except for Bucky Barnes. And he was like, he died in like the old Captain America comics. He was like Captain America's like weird sidekick that no one knows about. And then he never came back. And then like a year later, they fucking put out Winter Soldier and brought back Bucky Barnes as like, and he was the one character they didn't bring back for 60 years. And then all of a sudden he's a character again. And now he's now he's the Winter Soldier. He's in the movies.
Oh yeah, and he's extremely
that.
popular. Everyone loves him.
Yeah. But for a long time, Bucky Barnes was like such an obscure character that was like no one knew about because he was never brought back. And so I feel like comic books kind of prepared me for a lot of this anime bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, it's anime. Except for Attack on Titan. I feel like that one took a note out of like George R.R. Martin's book and like really like brutally just kills people. And you're like, yeah, they're
yeah. I mean, there is a lot of anime ass pulls happening in Dragon Ball Z, and that becomes even worse in Super once you jump into that. And so, of course, Goku ends up dying after the Raditz fight. And then we get the whole kind of lull where we're getting Gohan trained with Piccolo in the wilderness, where he kind of just throws him into the wilderness for an extended period to become more powerful. It's a pretty good part in the anime. And then
it's not a great part to play in the game, though, because you can't like fly or even sprint. You kind of just have to run around and try and collect fruit. And then it'll cut to Piccolo, who's like, oh, maybe I can throw him a limb, and then he meets what's his face? What's the dude? He was in the OG Dragon Ball, and he had like a sword, like a short fat. It could have been voiced by Danny DeVito. Short fat guy with hair.
Oh,
He's got a sword.
Yajirobe.
He ends up cutting off Vegeta's tail, I think. Yeah, he meets Yajirobe, who teaches him how to hunt. Which I'm assuming that happens in the anime, but that happened in the apparently like Piccolo sent him to do that.
You might be right. It's been a long time, but
it's in the game.
I mean that.
And like those,
I wouldn't doubt it.
those parts as Gohan suck. Because you're just like walking around, you're like, oh, gotta gather some apples. And it just like works as a weird tutorial. But once you get past like that part and he's flying around, the rest of the game's just off the rails. It's nuts.
All right. Yeah, I mean the part with Gohan, it was a little bit slow in the anime. I mean, meanwhile you have Goku taking Snake Way to go to King Kai.
So you don't see much of that at all in the game. You know, he starts his journey, and then you see him very near the end of the journey. You don't see any of the actual Snake Way
So
stuff.
in the anime, that actually becomes a filler arc. A little bit. It's not super long. But basically what happens is Goku falls off of Snake Way.
Oh.
And
where do you fall?
he falls.
If you fall off
Yeah,
Snake
he falls
Way.
off Snake Way, and then he ends up in HFIL, which is hell.
Oh, so you actually see it. I know it's referenced that it's a thing that exists, but I didn't know if you ever actually saw it in the show.
And then he has to. Gosh, I'm pulling this way far out. I think he escapes hell by going through this like palace full of like snake women. I think that's around that time, and it's I don't know. It's just this weird little filler arc, but yeah, it's pretty hilarious because they bring back HFIL later because the Ginyu Force ends up there, and it's like a gag.
HFIL.
Yeah, it's basically just hell with a bunch of bars removed. If you look at the word hell, yeah.
Okay.
And so.
Okay.
Yeah, so Goku ends up at King Kai's place, and then he trains with King Kai with Bubbles and like chases him around in the gravity and stuff. I don't know if you play that part.
That's the monkey,
Bubbles
right?
is the monkey.
You don't play it, unfortunately. Like, you don't really play any of the training on King Kai's world. You see some of it, and there's like cutscenes around it. But then it does like kind of a flash forward. Like, I'm going to teach you a great technique. And then Goku's like, great, I'm glad I learned how to do Spirit Bomb. And you're like, okay, I feel like there was some development that was supposed to happen.
Yeah. So he learns Spirit Bomb and he learns Kaioken.
Kaio, yes. Which is great in the game because when you constantly lose health when you go Kaioken, but you gain 50% damage. Whereas when you go Super Saiyan level 1, just regular Super Saiyan, you do like 30% damage, but it drains your ki.
Right.
So I would still go Kaioken because I did more damage, and I figure I'd rather end the fight sooner.
Yeah.
Little pro tip for anyone.
Well,
playing
there you
Kakarot.
go. That's cool. That's cool that they utilize the transformations that way. I think that's an interesting way to do it.
Oh, there's different. Yeah, you get to choose even up until the end. You can choose if you want to go like once you unlock everything, you can go Super Saiyan 1, 2, or 3, or Kaioken. And by that point, 3 is the most effective one to go. But you get other bonuses through training where you can like equip something where you're constantly losing health, but you do an additional like 70% damage. But like the higher, it's exponential. So the higher level you are, the more health you lose, and you will lose health quick. But you can't turn it on or off during a battle. Like, you just have it equipped. And so when you go into a battle, you can't change it. You're like, all right, I am draining
Okay. Oh, you
health.
got to. So it basically it's a time attack thing. Like, you got to hurry up and beat the shit out of this guy as quickly as possible.
Very much. But if you do that and go like Kaioken, you're going to lose health fast, but the amount of damage, you could just do like one Spirit Bomb and just wipe the floor with, like, just kill everyone in the arena, essentially.
Oh.
There are like different strategies you can use. And then you can get Senzu Beans, which you collect because Korin gets them, and then he'll let you know when they're ready, and you just got to go pick them up. The open world in that game is so good. So like a little bit about Kakarot is I'm going to give a quick rundown. The game is an open world game. The fighting's pretty arcadey. The combos are normally 2-button combos. So you'll hold like right shoulder and then like X or triangle or circle. or square, and that'll do an attack. You'll do like R2 and then also the same buttons if you have any buddies fighting next to you. So there's certain parts in the game where you can have friends fight with you, and then you can go fight like these optional bosses, which sometimes are like refights of higher level versions of bosses previously in the game. So like near the end of the game, you can fly around up places and find like the final form of Cell. Like you have to fight each form of Cell in different areas. And then like the final one will be like level 70 or whatever, and you're only level 55, so he's just gonna wipe the floor with you. But you're like, okay, I'm gonna get stronger and I'm gonna come back. Apparently, like by the end of the game, you're a little under, I think, level 80 roughly when you beat it. Like I think maybe level 70. I think I just did a lot of extra stuff. But the max level is like 200. So you can keep playing that game and really like get in where you just wipe the floor with anyone. But there's some like enemy scaling. But the encounters are kind of samey. Basically, like you're just constantly dashing. And if you're fighting a bunch of enemies who will spam certain attacks, it can get really like frustrating. And especially if you have to do it with certain characters, but there's like training missions and all these different like options about how you can go about, and you get new abilities, you get stronger, you equip new stuff. It's a great game.
Now you're just getting me excited to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I think even for Dragon Ball fans, it's a good. I think it might be on sale now too.
Yeah, I think actually at the time of this recording, which is April 2nd, there is a PlayStation sale happening right now, and I think you can get Kakarot for $40 right now, sale price.
Worth it, totally worth $40. I did try Fighters, didn't like it. I tried to play the story mode.
Well, the story mode is not good.
Well, I know. I'm not really one for fighting games. The only reason I like the Mortal Kombat games is because it's like watching like a sci-fi original series.
Oh, yeah.
The story's so stupid and absurd. And like you'll watch a 20-minute cutscene and then do like a 5-minute fight and then watch another 20-minute cutscene. And so I like eat that up when it comes to the MK stuff. But
yeah, Fighters is definitely, it's a game built for like the fighting game community.
Yeah, and then so much of it's tutorial leading up to it. I mean, maybe some of that's skippable, but I feel like, okay, no, just let me play the game.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't get super. I tried, and then I was like, okay, I can't really get into this. But like Kakarot is like that is 100%. The closest game it reminded me of was Asura's Wrath.
Oh, okay.
Which, yeah, and it's like if you mix that, but the quest system and the way you do quest and side quests. Okay, so there's this other things in the game where you have basically skill or stat boosts, and you, by doing side quests and meeting other characters, which maybe are essentially like Easter eggs or references to the series, and then there's a whole encyclopedia built into the game, which will give you a boatload of information on the characters, but if you also hit like Y, I know I'm jumping between like PlayStation controls and Xbox controls, so it'll pull up another menu where it'll say like, oh, in the TV show, this happened. And so you can kind of see what happened in the show versus what's happening in the game. It'll give you some like little extra details. Like it'll straight up say like when you're going to like Mr. Saiyaman and you tap that, it'll say, oh, in the show spent a lot more time on Gohan's high school experience and him and Videl. And you go, oh, okay, so now I know like the show covered more of this if it feels a little short in the game. The game's really good at like acknowledging that stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's like if you read everything and do everything, and especially the side quests, like, and there is a mission like the Piccolo Goku getting their driver's license. Like that's a mission in the game. And I know you were telling me about that being an arc, and when you were telling me, I was like, oh, I'm sure that's not going to happen. And then like, sure enough, there's a mission but that doubles as the driving tutorial in the game, because you can now build and like race cars. But the way they introduce you to all the driving mechanics is through the sub story of Piccolo and Goku getting the driver's licenses, which happened in the anime. Great.
Yeah, well, because it's a fan favorite filler episode.
Yeah, it does a lot of cool stuff where it slips that in, and there's good if you really play the game and do all the sub stories, which it's very easy to see. They're not like hidden. You can go into the world map and you'll have like these blue glows wherever there's a side mission. So they're very easy to like see where they're at and go to them. I did all of them. I did 100%, and I fucking loved that game. That was probably so far. That is the best game I played in 2020.
Wow.
That is my current game of the year. Now, granted, Resident Evil 3 and Final Fantasy 7 are about to come out. But yeah, Kakarot was like, for me, it was a sleeper hit because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know it was a game that existed. I'd never seen trailers before it came out. I found out about it after its release. And I don't know if I saw an article or something that referenced it. And then I read it and I was like, wait, what is this game? This actually sounds like this is what I've been waiting for. Because it's not a fighting game like Budokai or Fighters. Right. And I can play through the story. And I tried to do this with a Naruto game like 8 years ago.
Ultimate Ninja Storm, I assume.
And couldn't. It might have been that one. It was on like PS3, and I got it off of I think Redbox at the time. And something about, I don't know, I wasn't hungover, but something about playing it, or I don't know if this is before I realized I would get caffeine withdrawal. Something happened, and I had this terrible headache while playing the game, and I just assumed it was the game and returned and couldn't get into it.
Oh, that's a shame.
But I was going to do the same thing and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to get into Naruto, because a lot of my friends, just like Dragon Ball Z, were super into Naruto. Yeah. And I was like, it's back when I think a lot of people would call it Naruto.
Yeah,
is
it
Naruto
Naruto.
Or Naruto? Naruto. That's what I thought. Okay. And
I love Naruto.
But yeah, and if they release a new game on like this gen or next gen that kind of covers the whole story of that anime, I might play it.
I mean, shit. God, there's so much though to Naruto. Naruto's really long. Like, it might be longer than Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, I wanted to get into One Piece because I wanted to play that One Piece game, which Isaiah said he really liked, but I never.
Yeah, so that was basically when that came out before Kakarot, and a lot of people were really excited because they're like, oh, they're gonna do this sort of treatment with Dragon Ball Z too, which they did. But apparently, World Seeker was actually fairly mediocre from what I was hearing.
Yeah, and that's what I heard from reviews too, so I didn't get into it. And it's apparently like a pretty original story. And I looked at how, and this is back when, before the pre-quarantine days when I was still working like full time. And I was like, well, I only have so much time in the day. I can't really like take in another 40-hour game because I just don't have the time to play it. It's going to take me, 2 months to get through. And so I ended up not going with that one. But then I saw this thing about Kakarot, and then I kind of looked into it, and then I watched a review, which Easy Allies, which is a gaming website and review group out of California. And so they used to be with game trailers, and I've always trusted their reviews. I think they're always very well written and get to the point. And so I watched their video review for it, and they were talking about how well of a treatment compared to other games this does to the story, that it seemed like a lot of effort and care and heart was put into like faithfully portraying the story in this game. And so when I heard that, and then I watched the trailer and the gameplay, it had the similar criticisms to the gameplay, which again didn't bother me. It was like 2-button combos and all that. And I was like, okay, this seems like a great way for me to consume it. And then I got the game, and when I started playing it, I mean, the beginning of it was kind of slow, and I was like, I'll give it another hour or two and see if I drop it. Because, like I said, the first mission's a fishing mini game, which is like I feel like every Japanese game has a fishing 100%. Mini game in it.
I'm playing through I was playing through like this obscure JRPG the other day called Ease 8, and lo and behold, big part of the game is fishing. Yeah, always.
And I remember that was a big like for Yakuza 3. I wasn't super trophy hunting, but there was like this fishing trophy I was trying to get, and I got so frustrated. I was like, man, in so many games I spent too much time fishing. Like, it started with Zelda. I feel like was it Ocarina, or did fishing not come around until
was
like
had fishing.
Twilight Princess?
You're right. Yeah.
It did? Okay. Because I know that like Twilight Princess
had one of my favorite fishing mini games like ever. Because they went full fishing sim with it. They gave you like a bobber, and you actually had to like watch it sink, and then you had with the Wii controls, you actually had to like snap the Wiimote, and yeah. Anyways,
this kills.
Not to go too far off.
I can't do the fishing mini games. There's just so in every Japanese game, and so I was a little like, oh, okay, but it was like really straightforward, simple, and it's totally optional. You can play the whole game and not do any fishing whatsoever, or. Well, you have to do a couple for like missions, but after that,
Yeah, I mean, fishing is a part of the show too. There are a good handful of scenes in Dragon Ball Z where Goku actually is fishing, and there's scenes where people are actually like fishing with their bare hands.
Yeah, the amount of like emphasis that was put on it as like a character development bit, I was like, okay, so this must have been like an actual point, especially with like fishing with your tail and all that. But it starts with that, and then it's just Gohan bitching, and you have to carry him home because his legs are too tired. And it's just like, man, this fucking kid. It doesn't get better for a while. And so you carry him home, and there's Chi-Chi, and I'm like, okay, I know these characters, I know what's going on. And then as it goes in the game, I would say by like 2 hours, you've done some fights. You're like, okay, now I see what this game's really about. And that's what the rest of the game is about. And then I was kind of hooked. I remember I'd come to work and talk to you about it. I'd be like, okay, I just finished the invasion, the Saiyan invasion arc, and like just started Frieza, because it plays out as, so these arcs, which normally be like way more episodes, you get through relatively quickly. Like you could, if you're like a power gamer or something, you could do it pretty quick. I play a little slower, and I like to really investigate side missions and look in all the nooks and crannies. Because once I beat a game, I don't really pick it back up. I never do New Game Plus. The same way. I never really replay a game. There's a couple I do. Like I did, like Resident Evil 2, the remake did it in a good way because you could play through as a different character and the story was a little different. You had stuff to unlock. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll play through it again this way. And there's only a couple games I've beaten multiple times. One is Metal Gear Solid 2, which I've probably beaten that game like 8 times. And Twin Snakes I've definitely done a couple of times. Peace Walker I think I did twice. So Metal Gear Solid also my favorite series.
Yeah.
So I played most of those games multiple times. Not 5 though, because I have like 102 hours in 5. I'm not doing
it's a long
again.
game. I'm kind of with you though. I'm definitely not the.
It's the Metal Gear Solid 5 is the longest incomplete game
ever. Yeah, I know. Imagine if he actually got,
because it still feels like they didn't finish it.
And so I'm definitely with you though. I definitely don't replay games very often at all, unless I just like it that much. But to get back to the Dragon Ball Z discussion, but I will say though, I think the series and the story really starts to come together once you get into Nappa and then Vegeta. Because I mean, obviously the Vegeta fight between Goku and Vegeta, like that's iconic. That's iconic Dragon Ball Z right there, because Goku comes in and he's fighting Nappa, and then because when he shows up, everyone's getting their ass whooped, including, and that's when we learn that Yamcha sucks and Yamcha just gets killed every chance he gets.
Yeah. Well, you learn everyone kind of sucks, and everyone's on like another level. These people who are known as like super powerful in Dragon Ball just are nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And then so Goku comes in and he fights Nappa to save everyone's ass, and he goes Kaioken and just destroys Nappa. And yeah, exactly. And like where he breaks Nappa's back and shit like that, and like throws him to the ground. That part was like awesome. And so that was, I think, when you get the sense in the series that like, oh hey, like the characters in these shows, like they can become real badass. And that's when Goku takes on Vegeta, and that whole thing happens. Iconic battle. Gallic Gun versus Kamehameha. Yeah.
I like Gallic Gun more. Like as using the ability, like in a game, Gallic Gun, especially the way it levels up, that's a cool ability. It just takes longer to cast.
Oh, okay.
Than in the game anyway. I don't know about in the show, but he because the time it takes him, because they have to say every attack. It's like Gallic Gun. Yeah. And there's like that pause between, and you can get attack interrupted. In that way, and you can do the same can happen with Kamehameha or Kamehameha, but he just says it a little bit faster. Spirit Bomb takes the longest, but you can't interrupt it. So you can be throwing it, someone can just fly up, you can start hitting you a bunch of times. You're still gonna send that Spirit Bomb, and it's still gonna fuck up everyone in front of you. And then when you get like the not Ultra Spirit Bomb, there's another, I forget what word they use. It's a something Spirit Bomb, which is an even bigger, more powerful one. That's just all you just go Super Saiyan level, like being in a fight, Super Saiyan level 3 Spirit Bomb. That's how you start every battle. And you just like wipe half the enemies, just disappear, and then you just kind of wipe up the rest.
I'm curious as to what you thought though from a story standpoint of like up through the Vegeta fight, because I thought the sort of like weight behind the Vegeta fight, like they kind of I'm sure now they kind of give you the idea that Vegeta's going to become a big part of the story. But at the time, they're just like, he's this big evil guy who was destroying planets for this alien race. And
yeah, Vegeta, I like him and dislike him for the same reason, because he's such a dick. And he's so stubborn.
Yeah.
But I think that's why he makes but I do like that he's a character who always, in a very different way, he's very self-berating, and like in how he pushes himself to be stronger, is he focuses on his failures to be stronger, whereas Goku focuses more on his strengths and successes and goes like, I did that, now I want to be able to take on what's next, so I need to get stronger, so I'm ready for the next thing. Whereas Vegeta's very much of I fucked up on this, so I need to be stronger so I don't fuck up the next time. And I just think their attitudes in general are very, very different. But as far as this fight, it was great. Like I said, at the end of any arc, you can tell, because in the game, the animation goes off the rails. It very much, I think, tries to go one-to-one with the anime. And I've seen some like side-by-side comparisons, and my understanding is that it does a really good job of that. And so, yeah, that final battle, and I remember I got close to it, and then I talked to you about it, and you were like, oh, just wait till the end.
Oh,
it's
epic.
Yeah. And it was awesome.
Yeah, because the part where Goku goes like
the end of
Kaioken times 4 or whatever, when he's in the middle of a Kamehameha, like against Vegeta, when he's doing Gallic Gun, and he goes like times 4, and because he's like, don't do it, Goku, you'll kill yourself or whatever. But then it's just like a fucking huge explosion blast, and like, yeah, that was the hypest shit ever when you were a kid, man.
I just don't even know how Vegeta lived. Like, he was beat up, and then Goku, because he's fucking Goku's like, yeah, we'll let him go.
You played through the story, man. You know by now that, like, anyone could live through anything in that fucking universe.
Everyone. It's like, it makes no sense. It doesn't follow any set logic.
Absolutely not. You kind of just got to throw it out the window and just be entertained, honestly. Like,
yeah. It's fun as hell, though. It's fun as hell. But I think the Saiyan Invasion one was great. I think my favorite arc is probably Frieza. Yeah. I think it sees a lot of development with characters.
Absolutely.
I will say, though, like, Cell and the Cell saga making Gohan not suck was pretty dope, too.
Yeah.
Like, I liked seeing him get so strong and then, like, finally realizing how to tap into his abilities. Plus the hyperbolic time chamber was a pretty neat like addition, because I feel like we hadn't really seen it that much before this point. No. The game doesn't really talk about it until the Cell Saga. It's very, very Deus Ex Machina kind of shows up.
It is. It's one of those things where they're like, yeah, we have this secret room. You can train as long as you want. And it's like, okay, well, now they can just take advantage of that anytime they want. And yeah.
Yeah. Future Trunks was pretty cool too. When he showed up and just like fucks up Cell, like Cell Reborn or not Cell, Frieza.
Well, I don't want to skip over. I want to get to that in just a second, but I don't want to skip over the Frieza saga because the Frieza saga is extremely important. So like coming into the Frieza saga, obviously, I mean, it takes forever to get there, but like for good reason, because there's a lot of lore writing on everything coming up to the Frieza saga, because you learn after Frieza or Vegeta comes to Earth that he actually works for Frieza, right? Because like, the Saiyans are under Frieza's command and they take planets. Do you think they knew that, or you think they just kind of like, let's just make it where Vegeta works for someone? Because they don't really talk about it at all. Oh, really? Okay, so that's kind of a huge gap then.
Maybe not in the game.
Because do they cover like how the Saiyans came to work for Frieza in the game?
Well, no, they have that Frieza destroyed planet Vegeta, but they don't. But like, Vegeta finds that out. Like, he didn't know that from day one, right?
I think you're right, because I think because he's under the impression that it was destroyed by a comet or something like that.
Yeah, that's something else destroyed. But you find out Frieza
right,
did it.
And that's when he gets pissed. So basically, this is a little bit of extra knowledge for you, but there was a TV special for Dragon Ball Z that was called Bardock, the Father of Goku, which is basically what happens is Planet Vegeta, and that special anyway, Planet Vegeta, like, everyone gets sick of working for Frieza because he treats them like shit, and they're like forced to like take over these planets and sell them on basically the galactic black market for Frieza. So Frieza makes a shitload of money. And so Bardock, which is Goku's father, stages an uprising, like a revolution with all the Saiyans, and tries to take out Frieza himself along with the rest of the Saiyans. And so Frieza is just like, oh, well, fuck you then. And then just like death balls the entire planet and takes out everyone with it.
And so like Battle of the Gods references this, and apparently it was like Beerus who told them to do that?
Yeah. So
is that like a weird...
Yeah, so Beerus... Yeah, exactly. So Beerus, later on, they kind of... the reason why Frieza is the way he is because he's made by Beerus to be a force of evil to balance out the universe. So Frieza based...
Wait, he was made by
essentially,
Beerus?
like, Beerus assigned him to do what Frieza does to basically balance out the universe, like to destroy planets and stuff. That's like, I don't think Frieza's conscious of it, but that's why he does what he does, is because Beerus has him do it to basically create equilibrium throughout that universe.
Okay, which makes no sense.
Yeah, it's like the balance of good and evil sort of bullshit.
Yeah. There's zero logic to it. And then the movie didn't explain anything actually.
Yeah,
really,
like they're just like, this Goku guy, he turned Super Saiyan and took out Frieza. He's like, oh, that bastard Frieza, huh? Yeah, but I mean, at the time, I thought that was kind of cool. It gives a little bit more lore reasons. But yeah, so obviously that leads up to the big fight with Frieza after there's all that crazy running around on Namek happens. Excuse me, and the Ginyu Force and all that stuff. Like there's all that running around that Vegeta and Gohan and Piccolo does. It's like basically a giant rat race to find all the Namekian Dragon Balls. Oh
yeah, the Namekian Dragon Balls versus the regular Dragon Balls. And they have their own Shinron
right,
guy.
Exactly.
What is Shinron? Does that translate to anything? Because I know like Shinra is another company in like Final Fantasy, and I'm like, Shin. What is Shin just a name?
Well,
or does
it's
Shenron,
not Shinron. It's Shenron. Shenron. Shenron.
Versus
yeah.
okay.
And I honestly don't know what that translates to, if I'm being real with you.
Wow.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there's that wild goose chase for all the Dragon Balls and blah blah blah, and that eventually leads up to Vegeta fighting Frieza, and that turns terribly, obviously, and Vegeta gets his ass beat, and then Goku finally shows up, be like, yeah, I'll take it from here, Vegeta, and Vegeta's like, yeah, avenge our Saiyan race. And
this whole even in the game, and I know the game's like an abridged version, but he's like, you have to do it for the Saiyans. Yeah. It's just like, all right, okay. Yeah. Just die.
I mean, I don't know. I thought it was a cool moment when I watched it in the show, because
I don't know. I was watching. I was just like, let's just come on.
Yeah, but I mean, it's basically like all the lore that's been shown up to that point in the show coming to a head, right? So like the fight between Goku and Frieza, and then Goku turning Super Saiyan is like a huge deal in the lore, because Super Saiyan was always heralded as this legend that they never knew if it was going to come to pass. So henceforth comes the longest anime battle in history. The planet's blowing up. They're trading blows and blasts and everything. Frieza goes 100% full power, where he's like ridiculously buff and shit. And of course, Goku goes Super Saiyan after Frieza kills Krillin, because he gets really pissed off. And that scene in the show, I don't know, I'm sure they animated it in the game, but that scene in the show was one of the hypest moments in anime at that point.
I mean, it was definitely like a constant escalation until it got to a point where like everyone's been teleported off the planet and they're fighting, and like, the whole thing's going to get destroyed. Still don't know how Goku survived it. He apparently went to some other planet and learned like instant transmission. Yeah. But the game does not tell you how he got to that planet. It's just got them fighting, and then it blows up, and then it goes back to Earth, and everyone's like, mer.
Oh, really? Okay, so what happens, to my recollection, I think what happens is, so Goku finally finishes off Frieza, and then he's like, oh shit, this planet's about to blow up. I need to get the fuck out of here. So it actually shows him like climbing.
Oh, he's about to leave, and then Frieza like shoots another thing at him, and he turns around and finishes off Frieza. Frieza's like, I'm going to let you live, which is dumb.
Yeah, and then Goku's like, he kills him for good. He's like, Frieza, you fool! And then dead. So basically Goku tries to track down Frieza's ship and tries to get off the planet, but I think he just misses it. The planet blows up, but he like creates basically an energy barrier around him, and it allows him to survive. And he gets picked up by the alien race that teaches him instant transmission, and that's where he ends up. And then he transports obviously from there to Earth right when Frieza makes it, and Future Trunks shows up. Yeah. Yeah, time, exactly. But the Frieza fight is just insane. It's so good. I
mean, I only played it, so I didn't really like watch the whole thing. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that was skipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, because normally when you wrap it up, then you'll get like some crazy cutscene that lasts for 5 minutes, and I feel like that was a pretty honest adaptation.
Right, and it also should be noted that they do get all the Namekian Dragon Balls, and Goku wishes for everyone on Namek who was killed by Frieza to be revived and transported to Earth, which is how they end up there. So that whole arc is just, I mean, that's the culmination of the lore, and I think everything after that, and you can definitely tell Toriyama like kind of meant the series to end after that in a way, because everything after that they kind of like drop a lot of the lore stuff, and then they get into the whole Android saga and then into Cell, because now we go from that to jumping into like, now we have time travel and now we have these androids,
and they never really do time travel again after Cell. The thing is, like, knowing because I knew so much of just like here and there information about it. I was like, okay, I know Cell's a thing. I know there's these androids. I know he like absorbs them. I knew different things like that. So going into it, I was like, okay, yeah, that's just part of Dragon Ball. So for me, it didn't feel like this weird jumping the shark. I didn't really I don't think I ever really got that vibe of like, oh no, this is nuts.
Yeah.
In Dragon Ball Z, I know Carrie definitely did, because she would ask me like, what's happening? And I would explain, and she'd be like, do you hear what you're saying? You're saying this like it makes sense, like I understand what the hell you're talking about. I'm like, no, because Goku, she's like, all right, what is happening? I'm like, no, Goku's just going Super Saiyan level 3. So like his power level is way up here. And she's like, you're saying this like I know what any of that means.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. It really does. But then when you're watching it in the context of the show, it just kind of like, well, yeah, because you hit a point where you're kind of just suspending disbelief, and...
Yeah, I'm like, so Cell's like eating everyone on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and what? They're just like, okay, guys, so this is what we're gonna do next. But so
she lost it when Boo turned someone into chocolate. She was like, what?
Like, Toriyama's just like, now he's gonna turn him into chocolate. Sure, yeah, why not? And so I think so Future Trunks shows up, right, and then basically lets Goku like, well, this is where. He lets Goku know that like he's gonna get like some heart disease, so all of them need to like train to fight off the androids.
I forgot about
they need
that.
to like train.
Like what? Like where'd that heart disease even come from?
I don't know. I don't remember.
It's just some weird like, yeah, you're gonna get a heart disease, and he doesn't take his medicine for it.
Yeah, Future Trunks, because that's actually more important, almost more important than the Bardock TV special. I don't know if they show anything from the Future Trunks TV special, but that's actually pretty seminal to the lore of that arc. So basically, because Trunks comes, he explains, but he comes from an alternate future where the androids and Cell win. And basically the world is in an apocalypse, and Gohan grows up to train Trunks to become a Super Saiyan and all that stuff. Yeah, and there's like this whole thing where like Gohan fights the androids and he goes Super Saiyan, but he ends up losing his arm, so you have like one-armed future Gohan. What? I'm serious. Like,
yeah. The game doesn't touch any of that.
You should watch it, man. It's only like, it's not even an hour long. But anyway, yeah. So because since Goku and Vegeta are both dead in that alternate future, Trunks like teams up with Bulma to create a time machine, and that's how Trunks gets to where he is in the main story. So he's like, yeah, we need to prevent Goku from dying so we can defeat the androids, and because he's powerful enough to do so. And then everyone needs to prep and train to fight the androids. And
for 2 years.
And I think they use and abuse the hyperbolic time chamber at that point too. So that's how you get the whole idea of the Super Trunks and the Super Vegeta transformation, where they're just uber buff. And everyone thinks that's like Super Saiyan 2, but it's actually just Super Saiyan, but just way more power, and somehow that power translates into them being roided out. It's just anime logic. I don't fucking know.
I don't understand how that's not just Super Saiyan 2. Let's just make that Super Saiyan 2, and the next one is Super Saiyan 3.
Well, yeah. And so
it feels like it, but yeah, he's just like, I'm Super Vegeta.
But Goku points out later on, I think in the series, it was in tandem with when Vegeta was fighting against the androids in his super form, because at that point Goku is training with Gohan, and Goku discovers the super Goku form, quote unquote, and he's like, well, the one downfall of this form is you lose a lot of speed. You have a shit ton of power, but all your speed's gone because your form is just so huge. And so, of course, that leads to Vegeta getting his ass beat because he's just too damn slow. Yeah. So, but Super Trunks was like really fucking cool because he starts destroying people. And then I'm trying to recall all of this. There's so much that happens in the Android Saga. You kind of have to you're probably gonna have to guide me through it a little bit because.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think, man, I do enjoy Dragon Ball Z, but it's dumb as hell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like all over the place. No, so basically, Cell starts with Frieza, and Frieza's somehow Terminator Frieza, and he's back, and him and his daddy show up, and then Super Trunks shows up and murders him, and everyone's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Goku, I can tell you this, but you can't tell anyone else this. I'm Bulma and Vegeta's son." And Goku's like, "What? Okay." And then later, Goku's like, "Yeah, that's totally your kid." And they're like, "What?" And Vegeta's like, and he's like, "Oh, there's this thing going to come in 2 years. Apparently I have a heart problem, so I'm just going to forget to take my medicine." He's like, "So let's train in the hyperbolic time chamber." And Trunks is like, "Dad, let's do it together." And Vegeta's like, "You'll never be good enough for me." And they train, and he's like, "You've earned my respect." And then Cell shows up and eats the world. And and then apparently there's like androids 17 and 18. Oh, well, before all this, that's how they found out, is there's these 3 androids. There's 17. Well, there's this older one, and then this fat one.
Yeah, that's Android 20 and Android 19. Android 19 and Android 20. That's what it was.
Yeah. And the older one is the actual evil scientist guy from Dragon
Red Ribbon
Ball.
Army. Yeah.
Yeah. And he made himself into an android. And so they follow him to his lair. They're like, "Oh, we should go destroy it before he wakes up 17 and 18. And then Vegeta's a dick, so he's like, "No, let him wake him up. I'll fight him head on." And everyone's like, "Vegeta, you're being fucking dumb, dude. I'll fight you later. Like, we don't have to do this." And he's like, "No, no, 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 no." So he basically gets there first. They wake up. They kill the robot guy. They try to fight them. They wander around. They're looking for Goku. 17's like, "Ooh, this is fun. I'm a kid at heart, and I think it's a fun game of cat and mouse." And 18's like, "Can we just go and kill him?"
And I know there's Android 16 too, just hanging out.
Yeah, 16's just hanging out, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And then later, they get there. Something happens to 16, but Bulma ends up repairing him and taking the bomb out of him, which kind of screws him later, I think, because they took it out because they thought it was dangerous.
Yeah, but
and then Cell shows up and starts eating people, and then he puts on the Cell games, and then Mr. Satan shows up, and he's like, "I'm the greatest. First name ever, last name greatest."
Yeah.
First name greatest.
The point is, there's a lot of shit that happens in that entire arc. There's so many battles to keep track of. Like, I mean, Piccolo fights against the androids, and he does Hellzone Grenade for the first time, which is like one of my personal favorite attacks.
I didn't even see that in the game.
They didn't even show that? Wow. Did they? Wait.
What's it called? Hellzone Grenade?
Yeah, it's where he throws like a bunch of blasts out, and then he like brings them all in at once, and it does a shitload of damage.
Ah, that would have been dope. No, he does one where he basically goes like, and then like shoots out a shockwave off of him, which is great if you're surrounded by guys. You can do that really quick.
Oh, okay.
But he,
I will say there. I was curious if the game shows. So Piccolo actually fights first level Cell, and almost beats him. And
is this after he
fuses with Kami,
combined with Nami?
Yeah,
Kami.
He fuses with Kami, and they become one or whatever. And Piccolo actually becomes OP for a while. He actually becomes like super strong.
Yeah, for like a
half a second, and then he actually fights Cell and almost beats him. But Cell does a solar flare and actually escapes and gets away.
Yeah, and then they're about to beat him again. Vegeta's about to beat him, but then lets him absorb the androids, because he wants a stronger opponent.
Yeah,
like
even
an
though
idiot.
Vegeta could have beat him, because that was the scene where he does Final Flash for the first time, and in the anime that charge up takes like 4 or 5 on-screen minutes for that to happen. Like Jesus, it takes forever.
Of course it does.
Yeah, and then of course they get to the actual main part of the Cell Saga, which is when they have the Cell games and everyone shows up, and then Goku's like, yeah, Gohan can take them on, and then
that's a long
it really
saga.
is.
I feel like the Cell Saga really drags out from the beginning to end. It really is like, that is a long
it's very long, but the ending is so worth it though when you get the Kamehameha battle between Cell and Gohan.
Gohan.
And the part where he turns Super Saiyan 2 is so good.
Yeah, and then we'll fast forward to like Boo, and that's when you start getting like the fusion stuff and Boo. As a character.
It's just there's just so much. There's so many little details too. I think when the highlight for me though out of the whole Majin Buu saga is Goku versus Majin Vegeta, where they go Super Saiyan 2, or Goku goes Super Saiyan 2, and so does Vegeta for the first time. And it turns out that Goku could actually go Super Saiyan 3 at that point in the anime. He actually holds back. And
yeah, it wasn't until, I at that point I had this like weird duality with Vegeta where I liked him and disliked him, but it wasn't until Majin Vegeta that I was like, this guy's really a dick. He's really like, I got pissed off through Cell, but like Majin Vegeta, I was like, really, dude? Like, you care so much about like proving yourself and your hubris that you frustrating. It's so
which is why I think adversely I like Trunks' character so much, because I don't know if they show this in the game either, but one of my favorite things is after the Cell Saga ends, there's a part where they show Trunks going back to his alternate future, and Trunks has gotten so strong that he just fucking takes out the androids and first level Cell himself in like one go. He just like bum rushes them, and he's just like, fuck you, you're dead. Fuck you, you're dead. Fuck you, you're dead. Yep. And he's like, well, we live in harmony now until Super happens. So what did you think though up to that point when getting to the Majin Buu saga, and then they start throwing like fusions and shit at you? Because I feel like it's a hella anime thing.
It felt on brand enough. Like it made sense in the world, I think, by that point, because I'm going through it so quick. It's not like I get through a season and then I have to wait 6 months until the next one or something, or a year. So for me, it was moving at such a pace, and I already knew enough about it. Like, I knew fusions were a thing. Right. I'd heard Gogeta, and I've heard like Gotenks and all that stuff. Like, I've heard those names. I knew like the name Grand Kai. Like, I knew bits and pieces here and there. So when it actually started happening, I don't think I was very surprised by it. But but I'd see it and I'm like, okay, so that's how this happens. This is how I found out about fusion. This is how this works. And then I thought the thing with the earrings was interesting, and how like the Supreme Kai and his buddy Kibito kind of fused and stayed fused, because they're still fused in about all the gods.
Yeah, they stay fused, and I think they split apart at one point in Super, actually. But for the most part, they stay like that.
I guess they like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But by then, I think that it had gotten in the game, the abilities and the amount of damage, because the game had damage numbers pop up. You could probably turn them off. I kept them on. And you could see like what your attacks were doing. And like at the beginning of the game, you're doing attacks that are 300 damage. By the end, you're doing like 3 million damage a hit. It's insane. And so you feel stronger. And by then, I was more concerned with, okay, what abilities am I getting now? Who am I playing with? What am I doing? How's this fight going to go? And so I think enough of that was, instead of just sitting back and watching it and consuming it that way, I think playing through it weirdly kept it a little more grounded, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I like the way that it kind of portrays that progression throughout the show, because if you recall right, like the first couple of arcs, there's like this really big emphasis on power levels and like, oh, this guy's over 9,000 and yada yada yada.
They never did the over 9,000 part in the game. I kept waiting for it.
That's surprising.
Yeah, you'd think that they would have to include it, and for some reason they just didn't have it in the game. Yeah, I was waiting. They talk about power level a lot.
That's disappointing. I mean, it hits a point where, like, I think you get into the Frieza saga and they just stop caring because Frieza's like in the millions or some stupid shit, and
he starts talking about his power level like with his first form, and you're like, okay, well, that's just so
and everyone's like scouters kept breaking because everyone's power level was so high. So they hit a point where they just stopped caring and they stopped using it as like a plot device. And so I don't know, but it's cool that they kind of do that in the game and in a sense to give you a sense of scale. I think that's a great way to sort of do that as a sort of RPG progression and from a game design standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, you feel like you're getting stronger, and I think that was the best thing that game could have done. Instead of just kind of like giving you a set of abilities and you just carry those through the whole game, you're always getting new stuff. And then there's a lot of abilities that are optional. You just get through additional training, which I recommend anyone playing it. Just do all the training stuff, level up like as you go. It was a lot of fun. It was a great way to consume the story. I feel like I can talk about Dragon Ball Z to people who watch the show, because I feel like I know the characters, I know the major arcs. It gives you like all the broad strokes and then some of like the nuance. Of course, there's going to be a lot of stuff you miss, but overall, for me as someone, like I said, I don't know what the game is missing because I never saw the show.
Right.
So that's a benefit. If you want to get into it, but you don't want to sit down and watch 200 episodes, I would say just play Kakarot, especially if you like video games. It's a good game. Yeah,
no, I think it's a great condensed way to do it. If you insist on watching it, definitely go the Kai route if you've never seen it before. I also wanted to mention too that so I think I mentioned to you at one point I think Toriyama was actually supposed to end the series after the Cell Saga too. That was supposed to be another like stopping point. But it was also in speculation at the time that they were going to make Gohan into the sort of main character, and they kind of do rolling into the Buu saga. They kind of hint at it because they focus on him in school,
like Mr. Saiyaman, him
Great
going to
Saiyaman,
school,
and then they kind of bring him into the whole training thing where he gets the Z sword and yada yada yada, and they do like the unlockability thing, and he actually beats the shit out of Buu, but then at the last second they decide to nerf Gohan, and we're like, oh, we're gonna bring back Goku again, and they're gonna save the day. I think from a character writing standpoint, I hated how they kind of do that. Is they always bring back Goku as like Goku saves the day and he always has to, and
yeah, it'll always be Goku's show. I imagine Super is the same way where it's still him as.
Actually, so you have seen up through Battle of the Gods, right? So I'm curious what you thought about the whole like Saiyan God thing.
Man, Battle of the Gods, that's a moments that I was like, okay, that's good, that's cool, that's funny. I like drunk Bulma talking to Beerus. I thought that was funny. I was like, oh man, I was like, Bulma, no.
Yeah. Let's play bingo.
There was a lot of it where it just was like too modern anime for me. And now my definition of modern anime is really like post 2003. Which have some stuff which is like, I think like straightforward. I've never liked anime that does like characters going chibi or it gets cute or they're like quickly skipping frames and bouncing around doing weird stuff. And as soon as you meet Beerus, like Destroyer of Worlds, he's this cat guy, which I get that, and he's waking up from his nap and that's cool. But then he's in a chair and he's just like pew pew pew, like jumping around, like his animation, and it's just, I'm like, oh, we're going full like cheesy cartoony stupid anime. And then it's either the issue you run into with Dragon Ball is it is always in like an identity crisis. It doesn't know if it wants to be the serious anime or this kind of campy cheesy anime, and it really always tries to walk the line between. It's not till like the middle or the end of an arc that it really goes full serious. But with Battle of the Gods, the stakes never felt high.
Oh, because they're not.
And I know it's like, oh, well, Beerus could destroy the whole world. And I'm like, yeah, but I know he's not going to. I know, like, I didn't feel like anything was actually in danger. I didn't feel like I took the character seriously. And so it kind of felt, I didn't, okay, and this is, I will say this first, I did enjoy
That's
it.
good.
For the most part, I enjoyed it. But it also felt like a waste of time.
Yeah.
I was like, this movie could be 40 minutes long. It felt like a movie that had filler, which is like, that's not what anime movies are for. Anime movies are supposed to be like, no fat. Like, we are getting straight into it. But the first 10 minutes of that movie, I'm like, when are we going to get to the fucking point? And then at 20 minutes, I'm like, when are we going to get to the fucking point? And it wasn't until about 30 minutes and I was like, oh, now I'm actually enjoying this. Now I see where it's going. For a series, you have 26 episodes in a season normally. You can waste all that time. But like, if you're doing a movie, you're supposed to be like, we're an hour and a half. We're going to keep it tight. We're going to be a good like the best animation, better than the show, better than the thing. It's going to be great. And I'm like, the animation isn't even that good. There were some shots of like Vegeta talking that I was like, this looks like it was drawn by a fucking 12-year-old. Yeah. Like, there were some really bad frames in that movie. And I'm like, this came out in theaters? Are you kidding me? Like, I don't know. I was a little disappointed. I think overall, I'd say I was disappointed by Battle of the Gods. I think it could have been better. I just think that they hadn't put anything out in a while. And I think that it felt more like a cash grab. And like I said, I'll say I enjoyed it, but it took forever to get to the point. It could have been 40 minutes long and it accomplished the same thing. It could have just been 2 episodes.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think just the way that Dragon Ball Z is, I think it's one of those things where, especially after something like the Boo Saga, it's really hard to feel like there's any sort of stakes at all anymore.
There's none. Yeah, because when you bring everyone back to life,
I mean, it's sort of the common thread. So I think the main reason why you watch Dragon Ball, especially post Z, is you're more so just watching for the fights and the ridiculousness and the over the top of all of it. Mm-hmm. And Battle of the Gods was the first movie that they came out with like anything Dragon Ball related since GT. So I think they made it a little bit longer and stretched it out like that because people people grew up around those characters. It's a very nostalgic series for a lot of people. So they wanted to kind of like just have fun with it, give a lot of like fan service and let people just kind of spend that time with those characters. I definitely get it as like a newcomer. Like, it's like, holy shit, get to the point already. I 100% with you.
Especially when I'm used to going through all these arcs in such a bridged form where like the game very quickly gets to the point. Like, there's no fat, there's no filler, which is how I think the show should have been. I think that's why I never could really get into it. And I think for people who are intimidated by the show and how long it is and like, okay, well, I don't have the time for that. That's why I said, Kakarot's a great, like, it's just all the broad strokes. And so I think I was looking for that level of pacing. But like, as I was watching the movie, my thought multiple times was, I don't think I'm going to watch Super.
Really?
Because I was like, I can't handle this pacing. Like, this is too, like, I don't have the time in the day to dedicate if they're not going to just get to the point. Sure. I don't want to watch 3 episodes waiting, like, all right, when's something going to happen? When's something going to happen? When's something going to happen? I'm like, I can't do it. Like, there's other anime that I like. I've always liked anime that the entire series is one season. When anime runs multiple seasons or like arcs, that's normally like a turnoff for me because I'm like, okay, there's going to be filler. This is probably based on a manga that's still going after like 10 years. So like, that's why I like Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo and Trigun, because like by episode 26, you got to have all your shit wrapped up because it is done. And so I think the pacing just tends to be better. And whereas Dragon Ball, they're like, oh, we got 30 fucking seasons. We can just spend an episode having 2 guys play checkers. And then we'll just air it on NHK and people are going to watch it and it's not going to matter. And so I think I struggle with those like very long form. That's why I think I'll never really get into One Piece either for that same reason. I'm just like,
it's too much.
Like if I hear a season, like a series has filler, like if they can afford to have filler, probably not for me because I just don't have the time anymore. Now, if I was 16 again, I could sit down all day and watch that stuff. I just I think I value time a lot more now than I did back then. But I think it's just part of getting older.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a valid point, and how you choose your time is always important. I think a lot of the criticisms you have, though, especially as someone who's technically new to the series, about Battle of the Gods is fair, and I think the follow-up to that movie, which is Resurrection F, where they bring back Frieza, isn't really much better in that regard either. I think it's paced a little bit better. But
is it more serious? Because I feel like Battle of the Gods, for like a name like Battle of the Gods, it was incredibly lighthearted.
Yeah, no, 100% is. I think
it was mostly eating. It was a lot of like me seeing food and going, yeah, that looks really tasty.
I think the best part of Resurrection F is towards the end. It definitely is quite a bit more serious. I like people are actually getting fucked up and like kind of almost dying. Especially like Gohan nearly dies towards the end. And they
for like the 50th time.
And the best part though is actually Vegeta gets revenge on Frieza at the end. That's which nice. Is like a super crazy moment. They ruin it afterwards, but if you decide I won't spoil it.
Okay. I might watch it just out of curiosity, because there's a lot of this where I'm curious. I'm like, well, I do want to know what happens, but really, in my ideal world, I just get a Kakarot 2.
Yeah, so what you get with Resurrection...
And the game sold well.
Yeah, I mean, you get Resurrection F, and it does pick up a little bit quicker, because you start off with Vegeta and Goku training with Whis and Beerus on their planet. Okay. And then from there, it kind of just picks up, and then they hear about Frieza coming to Earth, and then it's paced pretty well. I think watching those two movies a lot...
I don't know how does Frieza keep surviving? That's what I don't understand. Like, a whole planet. And that was after Goku like destroyed him. Then he comes back as like Robo Frieza with way more of his original body than he should have to begin with. And that was even like that Cell Saga thing where like Cell's like, oh, there's a small part of me still alive.
That's kind of how they pull that shit with Resurrection F. And
then Boo does the same thing. I'm like, you can't keep having villains that have the same superpower, which is basically you have to destroy every atom of us if you want us to go, else we can resurrect. Because like Frieza, the same thing. You find that out after as he comes back. Cell was the same thing, and Boo was the same thing. It's like, man, you can't keep having villains that you have to vaporize, and even then, there's a chance they're going to come back. That's upsetting.
Yeah. So like the Resurrection F, they do this thing where like Frieza actually has to train for the first time because he's just so fucking angry that he got beat out like twice.
How did Frieza get so strong to begin with? That's what I want to know. Like, where does he come from?
They don't really give much backstory on his race or anything like that.
Of course not.
And so, of course, he like achieves a new form, which is Golden Frieza. And that's like his Super Saiyan, which is kind of stupid. But they make, he gets so pissed at Goku that he actually decides to train for 6 months, and he becomes that much more powerful.
Just 6 months?
And yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He's like, sure. I can't believe you're making me train. This is so stupid. Anyway.
What an overachiever.
But the great thing about watching those movies, though, too, is if you decide to jump into Super, you can skip like the first 2 arcs because they just rehash the movies in Super. I think, though, what really makes it worth it, though, is the first real new original arc in Super, which is the Universal Tournament. So they have a tournament between... So, of course, they bring in the whole idea. There's different universes now in Dragon Ball. And so Universe 7, which is Goku and friends, go up against Universe 8, I believe. And then you get introduced to a lot of new characters. And the fights that they have there are fucking awesome.
Is Broly from a different universe?
Broly isn't even introduced until the Broly movie, which is after Super's over. So we have...
Super's over?
Well, it's done for now. They're going to bring it back. But it's on like hiatus right now.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so they go into that arc, and then after that, you get the Goku Black arc, which is probably one of my favorite arcs in Dragon Ball ever. So,
I feel like in 3 to 4 years, I just want them to release Kakarot 2, and it just covers all of this. And I'm like, then I'll just play that because Kakarot 1 did really well. I saw an article recently where they were talking about Kakarot and its art style, where it looked even more like the manga before in playtesting, but enough players or playtesters said it like kind of made them weird or feel weird playing it because it looked so much like a drawing.
Oh.
I don't know if it was like some weird Uncanny Valley stuff or something, that they actually had to change it and kind of make it a little more like cel-shaded CG combined with some of that stuff. I think it looked a lot like the anime in the game, not as much as Fighters, but pretty close. But the original stuff, I'll see if I can find the article and send it to you. it looked really cool with the original version. I would have loved to have played that, but like I really want like because this will be next gen. This will be like PS5 and whatever. I think got to make a sequel.
Well,
to this.
the fact that they announced the Beerus DLC though has me confused though, because if they're gonna do a sequel, I don't know why they would do DLC.
Well, it's not really DLC of Beerus in like a story. It's more like you can play against him in a training mission, and then maybe get like Super Saiyan God that you can use in like a New Game Plus kind of thing. So you can keep playing after you beat the game. And so this is just like you can go in like a meditative training where you fight like a spirit version essentially of an enemy. And so it's kind of how I think Supreme Kai fought Gohan or something way back instead of actually fighting because they didn't want to draw Boo to their power. So they did like a psychic fighting thing. I don't know if that was in the anime or just in the game. I think it was,
but I don't remember the specifics, honestly. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I think Krillin taught Gohan how to do it. But Krillin kept thinking of like nudie girls. and Gohan was like, what? Why do you keep picturing me as this? And he's like, stop. No. I was because Gohan like caught him looking at some of Master Roshi's magazines. Oh. And then Krillin's like, no, I was practicing meditative training. I wasn't looking at those. And then as he's trying to show Gohan how to do it, he keeps accidentally picturing these like women in like bathing suits and stuff.
Oh my.
It's kind of a funny bit in the game.
That's really good.
But that's how like Gohan learns it, but then he later does it with Supreme Kai. So I'm talking about it like I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think like I said, the game's a great I honestly think for me the game was the best way to consume that story. Because I think it had the pacing that I'm looking for.
Well, I certainly hope in that case then that they do a sequel that includes the stuff from Super, because I think there's a lot of awesome fights, a lot of awesome transformations in Super that I would like to see in a game like that. And you're definitely selling me on this game a little bit more. I definitely want to check it out.
It's great, man. I highly recommend playing it, especially if it's on sale.
Yeah. Damn. I think we pretty much covered all of Dragon Ball Z though. That was
we kind of did. We kind of went through the whole series.
That's kind of what I wanted to do though, because I really wanted your take as someone who had never experienced it before, and I'm happy to hear that it even holds up for people that have never experienced it before. I think that's great.
I feel like I could talk about it, and people would assume that I've watched the whole thing based on how much I know.
That's good, man.
Yeah, so I think the game does a good enough job of getting you.
Yeah, and I think I was just more surprised than anything because my roommate's actually a huge Dragon Ball fan too. When we talk about it, when we tell people about it or talk about it around people that don't know it as well, it's like we always talk about it as if it was like a you had to be there thing, because we always joke about like how if someone watched it nowadays, it totally would not hold up, and people would just be like, "Holy shit, it's too much."
Well, so many things have like pulled from it and copied it that it like, and I'm not going to say have done it better. They've just modernized it where people are so used to that. It's the same thing happened when I showed Carrie The Matrix for the first time, because she'd never seen it. But there's so many movies that copied The Matrix after it came out. I'm like, no. You don't understand. When this movie came out, no other movies were doing this. Now, like every movie does time ramping and the slow motion the way that this does. But back then, not a single movie had done this, and then all of a sudden you have this movie doing it. Like, it blew everyone away, but now it doesn't necessarily hold up because like people have seen other movies kind of do it better or more modern. I feel like Dragon Ball is the same way. It's like if you saw it back then, like no other anime was doing that.
Oh yeah,
but now they all do it.
I don't know. There is certain parts of Dragon Ball, at least like in the animation, the way they do power scaling and attacks, that I think some of it is probably some of the most over the top and intense. Just the way they go about it and the way it's animated.
It's almost like watching pro wrestling sometimes.
100%. Yeah, like I'm stronger than you and I'm going to beat your ass and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, and I think it does it in a way that no other anime does it. Like, it's very original in that sense. Like, a fight in Dragon Ball Z just feels way more intense than a lot of other anime fights. I think the closest that I've ever gotten to that sort of feeling is some of the earlier Naruto fights. Some of the earlier Naruto fights are so well animated and impactful. Like, if it looks like people's faces are deforming when they get hit, and like, just I don't know, it's stuff like that. It's just really satisfying animation, I suppose. Is what it comes down to.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But man, I think we've covered a lot today. So you think we should bring it on home?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to us ramble on about Dragon Ball Z. It's been a great time. I always love talking about Dragon Ball Z because it was a big part of my childhood, and I'm once again glad that Mac enjoyed himself so much playing through the story like he did. If you want to follow the show on Instagram and Twitter, you can follow me at CollinInMono. That's CollinInMono, Instagram and Twitter. If you want to email the show with comments, questions, thoughts, ideas, concerns, you can email me at CollinInMono@gmail.com. Mac, do you want people to be able to find you on social media?
Yeah, I decided to finally start a Instagram account for my photography.
Yes, follow it. It's very good.
Yeah, it's just Collin.Macintosh is the Instagram account. Pretty easy. COLLIN.MACINTOSH. So I need to update it soon. So hopefully there'll be some more stuff going on there. But it's mostly, my whole thing with photography is I kind of try to capture an image in the way that I see something so other people can kind of see it the way that I saw it. So if you don't mind giving me a follow on there, that would be awesome.
Hell yeah, you should do that because Mac takes amazing pictures. He does a great job.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mac, for coming on again, man. I always have a blast talking with you, and it's even better when we get to sit down and record it and just really hit on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you're welcome on anytime, of course. All right, guys, that's it for us. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next Wednesday.